is the Amazon rainforest. It's breathtaking. So many people think of the Amazon as this vast natural oasis, truly wild, unchanged forever, dotted with a few isolated tribes. But it's a complete myth. See, a monumental mystery is unfolding out here, with new evidence of vast societies that thrived along these banks and stretched right across the continent, where now there's nothing but dense rainforest. I want to get to the bottom of this mystery and find out for myself the real history of the Amazon.
I'm Ella Al-Shamahi. I'm an explorer and archaeologist in some of the world's most dangerous and remote regions. I'll be traveling through the Amazon's conflict zones in search of a lost ancient world.
There's handprints. There's actual handprints.
I'll be seeing how new technology is looking beneath the jungle, uncovering vast hidden settlements and revealing the remains of entire civilizations of millions of people.
It's going to raise a whole pile of questions. Who were these people and when did they live here? Where did they come from? And perhaps most important of all, what on earth happened to them?
I'm going on an incredible adventure to solve a massive mystery. When most of us think about ancient civilizations in the Americas, we think of the mighty mountain citadels of the Inca and the great pyramids of the Maya. But here in the Amazon, there are no signs of ancient civilization at all. Just a vast, empty wilderness, lightly populated by scattered indigenous groups. But could we have got it all wrong? An extraordinary account by a European explorer almost 500 years ago paints a dramatically different picture.
One of the first Europeans to ever travel along the Amazon was a missionary called Gaspar de Carvajal. He actually wrote about it in his diary in the 16th century, and he talks about gleaming vast cities on the riverbanks. And he describes inhabited areas that were 440 kilometers long. It took them 2 days and 2 nights to pass through it.
Back in 1542, Carvajal described a highly developed civilization. One to rival the famous cities of the Inca. But successive generations of explorers found pretty much what we see today. Endless, impenetrable jungle. So the Spanish priest was forgotten, his diary ridiculed. But now, new archaeological evidence is suggesting he may have been telling the truth after all. My investigation will take me right across the Amazon, the world's largest rainforest. So huge, it spans 8 countries. I'm starting off in a region of western Brazil called Acre. Here, huge areas of the forest have been cleared and turned into farmland. It's just tragic, but it's also revealing something amazing. Allowing archaeologists like Jose Iriarte to discover the Amazon's ancient secrets.
Hello, how are you?
How's it going?
Watch out, it's super steep.
Deforestation has recently revealed these mind-blowing, man-made geoglyphs. Huge, mysterious geometric patterns carved into the landscape.
This is one of the most distinct and mysterious geoglyphs in the whole region.
We've all seen crop circles, but this is something like a prehistoric crop circle in the Amazon. This isn't supposed to exist, and yet it does. It is a bit mad, isn't it?
Thought to date from as long as 2,000 years ago, centuries before Europeans arrived in the Amazon, their sheer scale means they could surely only have been built by a highly organized society.
These are ritual ceremonial structures. If we get back in time and we think the technology that the geoglyph builders have, it will take 100 people a month to take out the dirt to build one of these structures. So we are talking about a society that was very complex to be able to plan, to build, and to maintain these structures.
Discovering these structures is a game changer. The people who built them weren't small groups of hunter-gatherers, but part of a much more complex society than experts ever imagined. Once completely hidden, they now seem to be everywhere. So far, more than 500 structures have emerged in this part of the Amazon alone, across an area almost the size of Scotland.
It's so completely unexpected. I think so many of us have got this notion of the people that lived in the Amazon, and it wasn't societies like this. This isn't a simple society. These geoglyphs indicate a really complex society.
These discoveries are starting a revolution in Amazonian archaeology.
Okay, what are we looking at here?
So this is our area of archaeological interest.
Today, cutting-edge laser technology called LiDAR is helping scientists to discover what's hidden beneath the trees without destroying the rainforest.
Look at all this area covered with trees. But when we remove the canopy, kaboom.
The scan reveals structures that have never been seen before, including one that Jose is particularly intrigued by.
As you can see, we found a new site that was completely unknown to archaeology.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's amazing.
What's revealed looks like a precise circle of mounds with a straight road leading to it.
It's incredible. That is completely hidden under the trees.
Jose believes this could be an ancient settlement. But there's only one way to find out for sure.
Tomorrow, we're going to do an expedition to go through the forest to find this site and see how it looks.
Oh, this is going to be brilliant.
It's morning, and a short, sweltering hike takes us to the edge of the forest. It's going to be dense, difficult terrain, so we need a local guide.
Oh, Naguinho. Tudo bem?
Hey, Ella. So what's your assessment of the forest behind us? Like, how brutal is it, really?
A gente pode encontrar lá alguns animais do mato mesmo, selvagem. Aqui tem jaguatirica, onça, tem porco do mato que pode atacar, porque é muito perigoso na selva.
I feel like I'm about to go to my death in there.
I've done most of my archaeology in unstable and hostile territories like Yemen and Iraq. But this jungle is a whole different challenge.
Here is the worst kind of forest. This is the thing we need to watch for, the palm spines, you see? Once it enters your body, it won't come out.
Are you being serious?
Yeah, it will come out in 2-3 months. So please be very careful with these spines.
The going is painfully slow, and it's taking much longer than Jose expected.
We still have a while to go, and I'm a bit worried because you can see how dense it is to get there. I don't know if we are going to be able to see anything.
Oh my God, the ants are everywhere.
We just did half of it. We need to do the other half.
Come on, we can do this.
We can't stay in the forest after dark, because at night, the jungle gets really dangerous.
Ouch! Nick!
Ay, ay, ay.
Then suddenly, Jose spots something.
Do you think this could be something, Ella? I think we may found something.
Could it be the entrance to the ancient village?
This could be the causeway. Interesting there.
We've been hacking through dense forest for most of the day, in search of what could be an ancient Amazonian settlement.
Wait, Naguinho, wait.
Then suddenly, deep in the forest,
Look at that!
Look at that.
This is much lower down.
If you take a look, this looks like a ridge. Steps down here and steps down to the other side. Neguinho is 1.6 meters, so we are talking that this mound is minimum 2.5 meters.
So this might be the entrance to the village.
This is likely to be the entrance of the village. Yeah.
Yes!
As an archaeologist, these are the moments that are really special, you know. This is our newly discovered sites.
I want to hug you. Sorry. Jose's like doing this in the background. This is just blowing my mind right now because this is real archaeological discovery. No archaeologist has stepped here before.
Not at all.
revealed by laser scans, Jose begins the first ever survey of the new site, piecing together a picture of an ancient settlement. And this ground truthing gives strong evidence that other newly revealed structures are also man-made.
It's archaeology like this that's retelling the history of the Amazon. There were people who were living here hundreds of years ago, and it's so bloody awesome that we're standing at the beginning of the village. But I am actually standing on an anthill, and they are biting me really badly, so I think we should move.
It's 5 o'clock. We need to get out. Vámonos!
We can now bring this village to life. Over 500 years ago, 20 or more houses would have been built on raised platforms, forming a circle more than 150 meters across. There was a sunken road leading into a large central plaza, where a community of up to 200 people would have gathered. And the LiDAR scans show this settlement wasn't alone. The road leads to another village nearby, the first of over 50, that formed a vast extended network, mostly hidden until now. It's powerful evidence that ancient Amazonians built permanent, organized societies. And it's just the start of the revolution that's changing our understanding of the Amazon. Back in 1542, the Spanish missionary Gaspar de Carvajal described even more sophisticated societies, with huge cities and lords adorned with elaborate jewelry. Now I'm heading to Bolivia, in search of those gleaming cities.
My introduction to Bolivia is a bit bumpy.
I've already seen how groundbreaking LiDAR can unlock the secrets of the Amazon. I've come to find out how it actually works and what more secrets it can reveal.
Hi,
Good morning.
Ella. Nice to meet you guys.
Mark. How do you do, Ella?
Hi, Mark.
Michael.
Hi, nice to meet you. Hi.
British archaeologist Mark Robinson and a team from 3 archaeological institutes are LiDAR pioneers in the Amazon.
Could you just explain to me what LiDAR is?
Okay, LiDAR is a laser scanner. This is a 3D laser scanner. And here we have a rotating mirror through the glass. And the idea is that you shoot a lot of laser pulses at the ground. So the laser will shoot out, hit the mirror, and the mirror's rotating. So it can basically get the full spread. And it can create an incredibly detailed 3-dimensional map of the terrain.
Yeah, you definitely get the motion sickness on the turns.
Looping backwards and forwards like this can be queasy work.
Yeah, you need a strong stomach.
The area we are scanning is mostly open floodplains, dotted with patches of forest.
Incredible! It is really surprising to me that this is the Amazon, because I wouldn't expect a massive floodplain.
Yeah, the diversity of the Amazon basin is just mind-boggling. For humans, these are perfect locations to exist. And the best of both worlds. You get all the resources of a savanna environment, as well as the benefits of a full forest.
Our main focus is an unusual mound, rising out of the otherwise flat landscape.
Coming up on the right, out the right side of the helicopter, we're going to come up on La Punta, a mound with a nice little white house on top.
Mark believes the mound is the relic of an ancient settlement, possibly built more than 2,000 years ago. Now he's in search of any signs that it might have been part of something bigger.
When we were on the ground, you could see that there were clusters of trees nearby. But it was actually being up in the sky, you could suddenly start seeing the other mounds that were really close by, in really close proximity, like neighbours to the La Punta mound, and suddenly you're thinking, all right, what's going on there?
All right, so if we look at the map here, it's our current position. You can see as we progress, we're collecting new data that's coming out as we pass over.
Amazingly, LiDAR is working its magic again. The scans reveal more man-made mounds nearby, many hidden beneath the trees. And the mounds are all different sizes, with some much more impressive than others. For Mark, that's curious, as it could be evidence of social hierarchy. A crucial stage towards large-scale societies. The La Punta Mound appears to be the epicenter of something much bigger, and it might hold clues to the great civilizations I'm searching for. I'm going there with archaeologist Carla Betancourt, who recently began excavating the mound. On our way, I can't resist taking a closer look at some of the wildlife.
Can you see them? You see the teeth on it? Look at that.
So, welcome to La Punta.
It looks beautiful.
Yeah, it's a beautiful landscape.
Already in the first year of excavation, Carla's uncovered a whole history of human occupation at La Punta.
This is amazing.
Yeah, the stratigraphy is wonderful. No? And you can see this black layer. That is the earliest layer from when they started to build this mound. Because we are talking about maybe 1,000 years.
Are you kidding? That's wonderful.
The layers of soil contain signs of the people who lived here at different points in Amazonian history. Their pottery, their rubbish, even their bones.
So that is a snapshot of 1,000 years.
Yes.
How doesn't that give you goosebumps? Like, seriously, how does that not give you goosebumps?
But it's the human remains discovered by Carla that are giving us a window into ancient Amazonian society. The unearthed skeleton of a man buried with elaborate copper earrings is a sure sign of status.
So I think this man was an important man in this society, and maybe a political character or something. And that is the reasons what we are thinking that was a society organized also with hierarchies.
It seems privileged people were living on the larger, more impressive mounds. The lower classes left with the lower mounds. It all fits with a complex class-based society.
Maybe there is something like a competition between this different group of people, and they are building these mounds higher and higher, one bigger than the other. So I think it is a sign of status or competition.
So that's interesting, because we know this in anthropology, that people do compete with higher and higher buildings. Even today, we know that people do this. People build a tower and then somebody else tries to build a higher tower. You get the idea. So it's kind of blowing my mind to think that people would be doing it with mounds, because you're keeping up with the Joneses, you're trying to compete.
I'm already building a picture of societies more complex than experts ever imagined. But the Spanish priest 500 years ago talked of an even more advanced society, of cities ruled by powerful lords. 800 miles east, in Brazil, I'm hoping one indigenous community can unlock that great ancient secret and perhaps the mystery of what happened to those lost civilizations. Back in Brazil, I'm still investigating the extraordinary diary of Spanish missionary Gaspar de Carvajal. In 1542, he was aboard one of the first European explorations of the Amazon. His account describes vast, sprawling settlements all along the riverbank.
And he talks about one settlement being so large that it stretched for 5 leagues, that's about 27.5 kilometers, without there intervening any space from house to house, which was the marvelous thing to behold.
But when Europeans returned to the Amazon years later, all they found was forest. And Carvajal's account of great Amazonian civilizations was dismissed. Today, new approaches to archaeology are completely overturning our understanding of the Amazon's history. It's shocking, but for years, we've ignored one critical piece of the puzzle. But finally, indigenous peoples' own accounts of their ancient history are leading the way. The Kwikuru people live in the upper Xingu region of Brazil. Today, there are just 500 of them. But they believe they're descendants of a once vast ancient civilization. And Chief Afukaka is proud of that heritage. American anthropologist Michael Heckenberger works closely with the Kwikuru. They've led him to a remote part of the forest where they say there are clues to their ancient past. The site is surrounded by a massive, mysterious ditch.
When we mapped the extent of this ditch around the archaeological site, it goes for over 2 kilometers. That ditch enclosed an area of 50 hectares, which is 20 times as large as the contemporary village. So this was a massive earthen structure that was built by a population that could mobilize labor on a much larger scale and obviously supported a much larger population.
Michael believes the ancient Kwikuru built the ditch as a defensive fortification around 800 years ago. Compared with today's village, the ancient settlement was huge. But in other ways, it was incredibly similar. So Michael can use the layout of today's village to guide him around the archaeological site. Starting oddly with the trash mounds that families always build behind their houses.
What we set about looking for first was the trash mounds. We assumed that between the plaza and these trash mounds, we would find the remains of ancient houses. So we opened up this area looking for the remains of that actual house. We came across suddenly a pot support. It's a very distinctive ceramic artifact. It's what they used to hold up their cooking pots.
This is an important breakthrough because the Kwikuru use very similar supports to help them cook today.
As soon as the Kwikuru saw that pot support, they immediately knew what we were looking at. They said, this is the kitchen. The front door is going to be right there. The sleeping areas are going to be right there. And sure enough, as we expanded our excavations, we found remnants of the front door. We found remnants of the sleeping area. This ancient community was built on the same principles as the contemporary community.
And these revelations are only the beginning. Investigating the surrounding area has revealed that this settlement was not alone, but part of an entire ancient urban network.
What really took me by surprise is how integrated they were. They were all connected by roads, and not just small paths through the tropical forest. These were wide and well-constructed roads with curves.
Michael estimates this ancient interconnected metropolis was home to around 50,000 people in just this area alone. Much bigger than anything else we've seen. It confirms what today's Kwikuru people have always believed.
Why not civilizations in the Amazon? The pre-Columbian societies of the Amazon, these were not that different from some of the classic civilizations we look to in antiquity.
The evidence is now really stacking up that ancient Amazonian societies not only existed, but did so on a scale and complexity that compared to today is staggering. Experts now believe as many as 10 million people lived across the whole of the Amazon. It looks like the ridiculed Spanish missionary Gaspar de Carvajal may well have been telling the truth after all. But that raises another huge question. Where on earth did all those people go? The truth is simple and tragic. The early Europeans, possibly including Gaspar de Carvajal himself, brought diseases that spread like wildfire through the people of the Amazon.
It decimated those populations very quickly. They had never had experience with these old world diseases, and once they hit, they would ravage entire villages and quickly move from village to village, precisely because these populations were interlinked in very complex trade networks.
In some places, the lack of immunity meant up to 90% of Amazonians perished from influenza and smallpox. Across the Americas, millions died in one of the biggest demographic catastrophes in human history. Some escaped death and enslavement by fleeing their cities. But unlike the stone relics of other great civilizations, their wooden cities rotted and disappeared beneath the forest. Over the centuries, repeated contact with the outside world has often spelt disaster, even in living memory.
Sarapo e Tibelina, Catapora e Tibelina. Gai kule te hatisatai vasina pilagel. Dea te te wanke ta kungi waka kugapu, kungi kalapalapu, kungi kuikurapu, menakwapu, agautapu, augapu.
5 centuries ago, this area was populated by as many as 50,000 people. Now, there are only around 500. Just 1% of a once great metropolis. And today, across the Amazon, its people are still fighting for their survival. Right now, the Brazilian rainforest is being cleared at a terrifying rate, as President Bolsonaro's government ruthlessly pursues economic growth. In the last 50 years, a fifth of the rainforest has disappeared, cleared for timber and farming. Indigenous peoples have seen their land taken away, their forest destroyed. But they're fighting back. And they're discovering that their history is an important weapon in the battle. As some communities try to prove the lands they occupy today are traditional indigenous homelands. I've come to a remote river town called Tefé in the northwest of Brazil. From here, I'm traveling upriver to meet the Kokama, an indigenous community that live in fear of eviction. But they've been finding unusual pottery, which they hope will help them to stay in their ancestral home.
The Kokama people believe that these artifacts are from an ancient Amazonian society. The problem is we don't actually know that they're that old. We haven't even verified that they're authentic. And the reason for that is that no archaeologist has actually examined them. And that's because the Kokama are actually quite protective over them, and they're refusing to release them to archaeologists. And so I'm feeling somewhat beside myself. I'm feeling really excited because they're actually letting me see them. We're here. All right, here we go. Hi, nice to meet you. Thank you for having us.
E sejam bem-vindos à nossa aldeia. E queremos mostrar cerâmica que a gente encontrou na nossa terra.
I am really, really honoured to see them, and thank you, because I feel like everybody's come out to see them with me.
The Kokama's lifestyle has continually changed with the times. But they also claim centuries of history on this land. And Chief Anildo has made it his life's work to protect his people from the threat of eviction.
Os ancestrais já foram enterrados aqui e nós vamos ficar aqui. O governo não vai tirar nós. Só se for dentro do caixão.
Although they're nervous of outsiders, Chief Anildo has agreed to show me the artifacts they've discovered nearby. It's the first time they've shown them to any archaeologist.
Okay. Okay. Oh. You can see there's quite a bit of design going on here.
Belais and her friend Teresa discovered these pieces while they were collecting Brazil nuts.
Nós encontramos lá na terra firme, aqui para dentro, lá da. Aí a gente andando por lá, a gente pisamos em cima dos cacos. A gente achou bonito e aí nós trouxemos para casa para colocar, para saber que aqui é uma terra indígena.
It's hard to tell much from a simple broken pot, but I'm quickly led to another house.
Tudo bom? Seja bem-vindo em minha casa.
And what could be an ancient treasure trove.
It's like a hidden museum around here. Look at that. Oh my gosh, that's a face, isn't it? This is easily, so far, of everything I've seen, the most kind of intact and most spectacular, really. It's an archaeological artifact. It could be ancient, and it's just kind of loitering here in a back bedroom. It's a delicate situation because these things have been in the ground for a very long time, and that's what's preserved them. If they were out in the open air, in this sweltering heat, they would not have survived. The concern is that something like this, you want to protect it, and you want to protect it for the Kokama, actually, not just for the archaeologists.
If the pottery can be proved to be ancient artifacts, it could be powerful evidence in the case the Kokama are building against eviction. But they've consistently refused to show the pots to outsiders.
Why were you afraid to let others see them?
A gente não era olhado por governo e por ninguém. E como a nossa terra não é terra demarcada, é uma forma de assegurar que é uma terra indígena.
They simply don't trust government officials. They're worried that if the pots are taken away, they will disappear for good, ending any hope they have of remaining on their ancestral land.
A gente teve conhecimento que é um material que pode nos dar mais segurança que as terras que ela foi habitada há muitos anos atrás.
Okay, I'm good with fish.
Oh.
Fish is good. Fish is good.
I really hope I can help the Kokama prove that people have been living here for centuries. Tomorrow will be the day of reckoning in their desperate battle against eviction.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Obrigada. So I guess today is going to be really dramatic, and I'm really hoping not traumatic for the Kokama, because we've organised for a specialist in Amazonian pottery to come down and to essentially assess and examine the pottery so that they can tell us if the pottery is actually ancient or not.
The Kokama have allowed me to invite Eduardo Temanaha, an expert in ancient Amazonian artifacts, to judge whether the pottery really is pre-Columbian, made before the arrival of the Spanish more than 500 years ago.
How's it going? Chief?
Olá,
Community.
tudo bom? Como é que tá? Tá bom.
Prazer.
The Kokama's hope of proving this is ancient indigenous land rests on Eduardo's judgment. And I'm incredibly nervous about how all this might turn out.
Suddenly I'm really rooting for this stuff to be pre-Columbian because, you know, it is a wonderful community. You see here, this is just the kids, they just come up to you, they say hello. Hey! It's quite upsetting to think that might not be the conclusion, you know, this is not pre-Columbian.
Aí pode pegar mais de só de por Cuidado para não quebrar.
But this is archaeology, it's science, and sometimes you don't get the results that you want, and it can be upsetting. That's not a nice feeling at all. So much here, it's just kind of finding spots for it. It's like a treasure trove.
It's the moment of truth.
I'm studying your face, Eduardo. Trying to see if I can see any clues. Well, what signs are you looking for?
There are some signs that we can say if they are ancient or not so ancient. What type of technology they use it to make this pottery? The color of the clay or what they put in the paste of this clay too.
Is there anything interesting that you could tell me maybe about this one?
Well, here we can see what they put in this clay.
It's the speckliness, right? It's like
Yes.
speckles, spots and stuff.
That is from the tree bark that they burn and mix with the clay to make the pottery. That we call it caraipé.
You can actually see that.
Yeah, it's very small, and these are a very old technology.
All right, this one.
That's very interesting because you can see here the human face, right?
Yeah.
We have here the human face. Probably they make something with red to make the eyes, the ears, the nose. It's very typical on ecological site in the Amazon.
So I guess this is the big moment. What's your professional opinion?
Well, definitely, with no doubt, this is all ancient pottery. All of this is pre-Columbian, and probably with 1,000 or 1,500 years ago.
Oh, that's amazing, really?
Yeah.
Oh my
Yes.
God, I'm so glad.
I feel really, really excited with that because it's a great collection that they have that is really amazing.
Eduardo, you're Brazilian. Do you want to tell them the good news?
Bom, na verdade o que eu posso dizer é que todos esses potes eles são muito antigos. Provavelmente todos esses potes aqui eles são de antes da chegada de todos os europeus aqui na Amazônia. Então ele é bem antigo, pelo menos com 1.000 a 1.500 anos atrás.
It really couldn't be better news. It's persuasive evidence that indigenous people, probably the Kokama themselves, have lived here for well over 1,000 years.
Quer dizer que todos eles são potes muito antigos, né? Provavelmente são dos parentes bem antigos que moravam aqui.
It means their ancestors may well have been part of those great civilizations that the Spanish missionary Carvajal witnessed all those centuries ago.
God, this is... yeah. Chief, how are you feeling and what does this mean for you and for the Kakoma?
Eu me sinto assim meio alegre, porque a gente tem como comprovar que aqui morou indígena. E a gente estamos aqui, a gente não vai abandonar a luta e cobrar nossa demarcação. Quer o governo queira ou não, nós não vamos desprezar e jamais o governo vai entrar com empresas dentro da nossa terra para destruir. Por isso que vocês estão me vendo assim. Somos guerreiros e vamos lutar até o final. Eu acho que eu não consigo mais falar.
It's a moving end to the first part of my epic mission, to explore how the story of the ancient Amazon is being completely rewritten by brand new discoveries.
What I've seen in the Amazon has blown my mind because it has completely changed my perception. See, we've thought of the Amazon historically as being this wilderness with a few indigenous groups in it. But we're finding out that actually, just a few hundred years ago, complex societies existed in the Amazon, societies with infrastructure, with roads, with hierarchy.
But my Amazon adventure is only just beginning, and I want to find out so much more.
How did they get here? How did they survive and thrive in such large numbers in such an inhospitable place?
It's the second leg of my Amazonian adventure, and I've arrived in Colombia.
Hello, nice to meet you.
Hi Ella, it's a pleasure. Welcome to San Jose del Guaviare.
I'm on an epic mission to discover the hidden secrets of the ancient Amazon. On my journey so far, I've seen how new technology is revealing long-lost civilizations that once thrived in the dense rainforest.
There were people living here hundreds of years ago. This is real archaeological discovery.
Until contact with Europeans around 500 years ago completely wiped them off the map. Now I'm reaching much further back in time to discover how those great civilizations first came to be. Here in Colombia, one spectacular discovery holds clues to the very first people to inhabit the Amazon. But this region is dangerous, and without my local guide, Oliver, getting in with cameras would be just about impossible.
Are we okay to have cameras?
If they tell us to turn off the camera, we will do that, obviously.
Do all cars get called over?
Not all, but someday. Do you have your passports with you? Así nomás. All good.
Everything all right?
Yeah, all good. We can keep on.
What exactly is the sensitivity?
The whole region has been affected by the 50 years civil war. So they still are checking people for arms, for example.
And this is a civil war with the FARC?
It's with the FARC, yeah.
War raged between FARC guerrillas and the Colombian government for 50 years, at a cost of more than 200,000 lives. But now an uneasy truce has been agreed.
How's the peace agreement working out in this particular area?
There are still some groups, active groups, so that means the peace agreement is failing, basically.
I'm venturing into territory still run by ex-FARC militia, because the jungles of Colombia are home to one of the most incredible finds ever made in the Amazon. If we can actually get there.
We're going there right now with the permission of the FARC.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what's protecting us and keeping us safe. This is like a rebel visa, isn't it?
A rebel visa?
Yeah, it is. We've basically got a visa from a bunch of rebels.
After nearly 3 hours, we arrive at a remote village that will be my base for the next couple of days.
Orbey.
The locals are very nervous about the possibility of officials coming to snoop. So I let Oliver try to convince them that we're okay.
A ustedes les ayuda. Yo tengo toda la disposición, créamelo. Póngale la cara al trabajo que usted hizo. A ustedes les ayuda.
So I'm not completely clear on what's going on. They're having a really big, elongated discussion right now about permissions. Everybody keeps saying problem, problem, problem. I'm like, clearly there's a problem. There's so much distrust. So what's the situation?
Well, the situation is basically they do have some doubts, so they are not like really happy. But negotiating, we got the access.
Good.
Yeah.
Hello. You're smiling.
How do you do?
Good.
Joining me is British archaeologist Mark Robinson, who spent 2 seasons working here.
Ready to see something spectacular?
Yes, yes.
Backpacks on, we head out from the village. Mark believes this huge rocky outcrop was a special place for ancient people.
It's incredible.
Isn't it just?
A good place for me to look for clues.
You could just imagine if you were a pre-Columbian Amazonian, just kind of, oof, you'd see that and it's something, isn't it? Looks a bit like the Mecca of the region. It kind of draws you in.
War with the FARC has meant this place has been off limits for decades. Following the peace treaty, Mark was among the very first archaeologists allowed back in to explore it.
That is something. I'm trying not to swear. That is incredible. This is the prehistoric Sistine Chapel.
Everywhere I look, there are crazy geometric patterns. Animals, birds, and plants.
I mean, there's so many, it's kind of overwhelming, there's just so much. Those are humans up there.
The paintings are like a distant diary, depicting the lives these early Amazonians lived.
We're seeing themes, we're seeing style to this. This is not an individual. We're talking about groups, group consciousness and group culture as it starts to develop and how they depict their world around them. So we start to really get an idea of who these people are.
There's handprints. There's actual handprints. Some person stood here and put their hand on that bit of wall. It's absolutely profound to think that handprint may be a handprint of some of the first people to have made it to the Amazon.
Experts believe the first people reached the Americas between 15 and 25,000 years ago, crossing a land bridge that then joined Siberia to Alaska. Migration continued south over thousands of years, finally passing through the narrow gap of Central America and into the Amazon. Those first people could have come through here, right where I'm standing. But just how old are the rock paintings? Is there any way of knowing whether they could have been painted by some of those very first Amazonians?
There are a number of different techniques in archaeology that people use to date things. Are any of them going to be of any use for this wall?
The one that most people know is carbon dating. But the biggest problem in this, there's no carbon involved. We're looking at ochre on the walls, so it's a real problem for us.
But I'm far from finished here, because it turns out that there's much more to explore. Last year, Mark and his colleagues discovered 16 more walls of ancient drawings, all completely unknown to science. And tomorrow, I'm going to be one of the very first archaeologists ever to explore them. It's morning. and I'm back on the trail of the first Amazonians.
Oh my God! That tastes amazing.
The art I saw yesterday was one of the most breathtaking things I have ever seen as an archaeologist. But it turns out it's just the tip of the iceberg.
This is the rock face we need to scale.
Because in this remote part of the Colombian Amazon, Mark has located another 16 walls, all covered with more ancient paintings.
This better be bloody worth it.
Mark has only ever been here once before.
Let's check the GPS. So the point we had from last year is just up here, and it looks like it's just through the bush here. We're getting close.
There we go.
And this is it. So you can see we've got a beautiful bowl, which...
Oh my God. There's rock art all the way back here. I've just walked past a turtle. There's all kinds. It seems to circumvent right around this rock face.
Mark's colleagues have started making 3D scans of the walls. So archaeologists will be able to analyse every single detail of these drawings without having to trek through the jungle. But it'll take time because, incredibly, Mark estimates there could be more than 100,000 paintings on this remote outcrop. It's possibly the greatest cache of ancient rock art in the Americas.
To think that I have the absolute privilege and honour of being in the very, very first few scientists, of archaeologists, to see this. It's just mad. Like, what we're looking at here is undescribed to the world. It's undescribed to science. How cool is that?
Compared to yesterday's site, some of these drawings look simpler, perhaps even older.
Come have a look at this one here.
And Mark has discovered a clue that could help us work out just how early they might be.
The little image right here looks like an animal with the animal head here, a large body. That shape of the head as well is quite distinctive. And then particularly distinctive is this long trunk coming off the front.
This is a mastodon, a prehistoric relative of today's elephants. But mastodons haven't roamed South America for at least 12,000 years. The people who once lived here must have lived alongside them.
Clearly there's an overlap between people and these mega herbivores. It tells us that this artwork was drawn at that time period. So this is a great chronological marker that these are some of the earliest people.
That's absolutely insane. I think so many people, when they think about archaeology and dating, they always think about, traditional dating methods like carbon dating and all the rest of it. But actually, sometimes there's something right in front of your face, which is an animal on some rock art that went extinct at a certain point, and it's on this wall.
Unseen by outsiders for 12,000 years, Mark is now identifying more extinct species on the walls. A giant sloth, and another completely unexpected animal.
That is so clearly a horse, right?
One of the interesting aspects with this horse is the head shape. This head shape, okay, it's quite a crude representation, but that's the head shape we expect of one of the earliest horses. Horses are native to the Americas, but they went extinct from South America around 13,000 years.
That is amazing.
Living alongside horses, sloths, and giant mastodons, it's clear that the Amazon these earliest people knew was a mix of forest and open savanna. Very different from the Amazon we see today.
To think that some of the earliest inhabitants of the Amazon were here painting, when importantly, the Amazon did not look like the Amazon rainforest of today. It's absolutely goosebump inducing. It's insane.
Leaving Colombia, I'm heading south, back over the jungles of the Brazilian rainforest. Across the Amazon today, there are at least 400 indigenous groups, including about 100 that remain totally uncontacted. All are genetically related, direct descendants of those very first hunters, maybe even those who left their rock art over 12,000 years ago. But just a few groups are startlingly different, with incredible genetic secrets that are challenging everything we thought we knew about how the Amazon was first occupied. One of them is a Brazilian indigenous group called the Suruí, and I'm going to meet them. But like so many others, they've been seriously affected by contact with the outside world.
When you look out the window, there's so many roads, and the roads bring with them a lot of problems. And so actually, for the Suruí, it was actually a road, a big highway that was put in 1969, that was where 90% of their population were completely decimated. Think about that. That's 90% of their population being decimated because a road was put in that brought in outsiders with basically diseases that they didn't have immunities for. So basically this whole area used to be indigenous territory?
Yeah. Whole area. There was virgin rainforest.
My new Brazilian guide, Flavio, is taking me to meet the Suruí, who now live on a small reservation.
All right, so I guess this is the village.
Yeah.
Oi.
Oi. Seja bem-vindo.
So nice to meet you.
I'm actually quite nervous meeting Chief Almir Suruí.
Thank you for coming out.
Okay.
So is this?
Posso chegar?
Hi.
Meu brother.
Ah, your brother. Hi, Ella.
Because in the past, the Suruí have not been treated well by scientists like me. Since the late 1980s, researchers have taken samples of indigenous blood as a matter of course. A violation that's been repeated numerous times over the decades, and that the Suruí strongly resent.
Eu vou apresentar a minha mãe para você. Minha mãe tem aproximadamente 98 anos e ela também foi a vítima desse coleta.
Hi. Hi. Can I ask, when and how was your blood taken? Did you ever hear from them again? Did you ever get any results from them?
Wetang Suruí's blood was taken in the 1990s to be shared and possibly sold along with other Suruí samples without any permission to scientists, including those researching ancestral DNA. They were never told why or given any results.
Assim, que eu não lembro, durante esses 10, 15 anos, alguém que veio nós procurar e pedir autorização que a gente possa, então, autorizar que fosse estudado de novo ao DNA. Depois que a gente ficamos sabendo, a gente fomos na Justiça Federal tentar buscar esses DNA e trazer de volta. Para nós foi um desrespeito sobre o nosso direito.
I'm sad that you were disrespected like that. I'm really sorry about that. That shouldn't have happened.
Incredibly, no one has ever even told the Surowi that their blood samples have opened up a massive mystery. I want to try to explain that what scientists have discovered in their DNA is simply astonishing. But finding a way to communicate genetics to them isn't going to be easy. And I'm pretty nervous about how they might react when I try.
I genuinely have no idea how this is going to go. I am so stressed.
On top of everything, I feel a huge weight of responsibility for all my fellow scientists.
I am terrified.
Because the discoveries are turning our assumption about the first Amazonians completely on its head.
So if I do it this way. Okay. How many of you are really familiar with this map? There's something really interesting about yourselves, actually, the Surowi. It turns out that you, unlike most other indigenous groups in South America, you share some DNA, some ancestry with people in Australia.
I'm trying to communicate a scientific bombshell.
Spread out.
That the Surowi have some ancient ancestors that almost no other indigenous Amazonians share.
The question is, how is there a relationship between here and here? You guys are one of the few indigenous groups that have it.
Most scientists believe that every indigenous group in the Amazon can trace their roots back to one ancestral population, which reached South America at least 15,000 years ago. But their DNA reveals the Surowi are one of just 3 indigenous groups in the whole of the Americas who are partly descended from another completely different ancestor that they share with indigenous Australasians.
It means that you're very unique. It means that there's something really interesting going on with you, and there's a sign of ancestry in you that really is very special.
We still don't know how or exactly when the Surowi's mysterious ancestors got here. But my attempt at explaining some science has unexpectedly set off a discussion about their own origin myths. It's incredible to hear the Surowi's own mythology about their ancient past. And I feel I've done my best to explain why we scientists think they're so special.
So this has been a completely profound experience, actually. We, the outside world, I think, have to give them so much more respect, and we scientists also have to give them so much more respect and help, because if we let the loggers and the miners win, we will have lost one of the most fascinating pieces of the jigsaw puzzle when it comes to Amazonian history. One of the most ancient people, and it would just be absolutely devastating.
My hunt for the origins of the people of the Amazon has taken me deep into prehistory. I found new evidence about the very early pioneers who migrated here at least 15,000 years ago. And I've met indigenous people with an ancient secret in their DNA. But how did the first Amazonians go on to forge the great civilizations that I found existed centuries before the first Europeans arrived? The first question is, when did groups of nomadic hunter-gatherers first begin to settle and build homes? There are clues in the far west of the Amazon, in Bolivia. Here, earth scientist Umberto Lombardo has been searching for evidence of prehistoric Amazonian settlements. He's finding evidence in the most unlikely of places, an ancient rubbish tip of discarded snail shells.
This is hard. It's hard like a rock, but it is not a rock. We know that in all this area there are no rocks. This is a huge floodplain, and all the sediments are really fine. It looks like a rock because it's full of shells. Snail shells. You see all the shells are fragmented and cemented all together. And this is actually an apple snail. This here we have one. So this is a small one.
The oldest shells here have been dated to 10,000 years ago, when they would have been a major part of the diet for the people who lived here. In what was a difficult and dangerous environment. These are the Bolivian floodplains. In the summer months, this part of the Amazon bakes under a relentless sun. But in the wet season, it becomes a very different place.
The landscape is so flat and it rains so much that it's very difficult for the water to drain to the rivers. So when the rain season starts, about 80,000 square kilometers of this area got flooded.
But over centuries, the snail shells discarded by these first inhabitants created something incredible. Forest islands that became a safe haven from the floodwaters. Umberto believes that as food and domestic waste gradually built up above the floods, trees grew on the drier, enriched ground, giving shade from the scorching sun. Each mound became an oasis of shelter in the vast, hostile plains. Rather than moving around, the people of the Amazon were settling down, forming the first permanent settlements in the region. And amazingly, Umberto has even unearthed the remains of the very people who once lived here.
The skulls are very deformed, it is squashed like this because of the weight of the sediments on top of them. From the radiocarbon age we could get from these remains, we know they are 6,000 years old, and they are among the oldest skeletons from Amazonia.
From the nomadic migrants of 15,000 years ago, I've discovered the first evidence of people who settled and built homes around 5,000 years later. But what happened next? To find out, I'm teaming up again with Bolivian archaeologist Carla Betancourt.
And you can see this black layer.
Yeah. I've already seen how Carla's recent excavations in Bolivia are revealing a sophisticated society that flourished well over 1,000 years ago. Now she's contacted me about a new find, a 1,500-year-old skeleton, which Carla hopes might contain clues to how Amazonians from that era lived.
The thing with skulls is they're actually usually quite light, and this one feels like a rock. And the reason why it feels like a rock is that it's clearly still covered in dirt.
Carla and I are coming to a nearby lab to see what secrets this new find might contain.
Right.
Hi, Ella. Nice to meet you. This is the moment of truth. It's like unwrapping a Christmas present out here. Really careful operation. Ah, look at this. Oh, that's great. That's great. As you can see, this is clearly an eye socket. There's another eye socket here. You've got the nose. But you can see the detail, can't you, Carla?
You can see the face and everything.
Yeah.
As a paleoanthropologist, I'm used to studying human remains. But this is my very first ancient Amazonian. The teeth of Carla's skull might contain clues to how this ancient Amazonian lived.
We've got to be careful because that might dislodge the whole tooth. There we go, it's coming out. Perfect. The enamel, that tooth has really, really been worn down through something it's eating, through some kind of wear.
Let's do it.
But the best way to analyze this skull is by scanning it with 21st century medical technology.
No.
Oh, wow.
Oh my gosh, it's cleaned up all the dirt, essentially. You can just see the bone. That is so cool. The teeth, look how clean they are, finally. This is why people get so excited about CT scans, because if we were cleaning this up, we would have had to be really delicate, take it to a lab, it would have taken time, we may have damaged it in the process. This is brilliant. Thank you so much. So good.
Our examination reveals tooth wear consistent with eating a grain, like maize.
It is really cool to think that that skull has been in the ground for 1,000 years and now it's been brought back to life. It is so unusual to find human remains in the Amazon, and I'm basically beside myself that we got to CT scan one of them. And you know, it wasn't the best preserved human remains. It was crushed, it was covered in earth, and yet you saw what that CT scanner did. That's pretty awesome.
The people Carla is excavating were not only settled, they were farmers. A crucial step in forging a civilization. But there is still one great mystery to be solved. The Amazon rainforest is a hostile place, and despite appearances, its soils are poor and unable to sustain agriculture. So how on earth did ancient people tame it and sustain a population that experts now estimate was in the millions? I've discovered that by the time Europeans arrived in the Amazon almost 500 years ago, great civilizations were thriving. But how could they grow enough food to sustain themselves? Ecologist Carolina Levis and botanist Mariana Cassino are investigating the mystery, looking for clues in a small, self-sufficient village. The natural soils of the Amazon are a light-coloured clay, but this village was built on something very different.
We can see these big layers of a darker soil.
The soil in some parts are really dark, full of ceramics and full of charcoal. When we find these soils with a lot of ceramics, we know that they were created by human activities.
Ancient people who once lived here transformed the natural soil, and it's still fertile 2,000 years later.
Now we are finding these black earth soils created by humans in many, many places of the Amazon.
Scientists have now identified more than 1,000 sites in the Amazon with this magical secret: charcoal-rich, highly fertile, black earth. Within this dense forest, there were once fields growing crops like maize and manioc. But it wasn't just cleared areas that were tended. Beyond the village, Mariana and Carolina are discovering that ancient people even tamed the forest, turning swathes of jungle into giant gardens, planted with everything the people here needed to thrive.
Look at that, a big Brazil nut tree.
Yeah. Here in this place, we have a huge diversity of plants. Plants used for construction, food, medicinal.
Carolina and Mariana are convinced that high concentrations of certain trees growing today can only be explained by centuries of forest management, with ancient traditions that have been passed down into living memory.
Isso aqui é fruta dessa árvore aqui. Eles pegavam esse ouriço aqui, que é o nome de ouriço, né? Eles cavavam um pouco assim o chão, afastavam a terra. Assim, mais ou menos o que eu vi meu padrasto fazendo, e minha mãe também.
Tá.
Eles enterram aqui assim. E elas vão sair aqui nessa boquinha aqui. Então vem 10, vem 15 árvorezinhas dentro desse. Quebra aqui. Tanto para comer como para plantar. Tem que ter prática também, senão corta a mão, né?
Claro.
Então aqui é a castanha.
For hundreds or even thousands of years, the peoples of the Amazon tended the forests, encouraging rich orchards to grow amongst the trees of the rainforest. With the collapse of these great civilizations, after the first Europeans arrived, the gardens and orchards were overgrown, disappearing into the jungle. Everywhere I go, I'm meeting indigenous people whose lives are changing with the times. But who still live more or less sustainably within the forest. often fighting to keep their ancient traditions alive.
Ella.
The Huachaperi people's story echoes that of indigenous groups all over the Amazon.
Hola.
¿Cómo está, señorita?
Buenos días.
¿Cómo está, señorita?
Very well, thank you. Thank you.
Are you on the gutting? What kind of fish is this?
Paco.
You know where I come from? We think that these eat humans.
No.
No, she's having none of this.
Hi, this is one hell of an outfit. Hey!
¿Puedes prestar un ratito tu flecha? No tengo flecha.
Billy wants his arrow for the traditional dance and he can't find it.
Even without his arrow, Billy's not going to miss this dance. A tradition handed down over generations. But like so many indigenous groups, the Huachaperi have been decimated by disease, in their case an epidemic of smallpox, brought by outsiders in the 1940s.
Nuestra comunidad ahorita se encuentra muy reducida, está conformado por poca familia.
Like peoples all over the Amazon, their forest was cleared by loggers. The land turned over to cattle ranching. And in the 1960s, they were moved onto 2 small reservations. Once there were around 30,000 Huachaperi. Now, just a handful remain, like Eddie Darakabi.
En total serían 60 habitantes entre todos. Entonces la idea es de que nosotros como pueblo tratemos de mantener toda nuestra cultura porque de eso al final vamos a vivir, ¿no?
See, this might just look like what you'd see in a school assembly somewhere. I'm sure that's part of it, but if you notice, they're all kids, and there's maybe a few dozen people left in the whole world that speak this language. And so really, this is also a way of keeping the traditions and the language alive.
More than 13,000 years of continuous history, from rock art to settlements, farming and civilization. Right across the Amazon, indigenous people are struggling as their world literally disappears around them. On my journey, everywhere I go, I'm seeing the Amazon being destroyed.
Oh my gosh. You can see this, right?
As modern demands for food lead to agricultural methods that are having a devastating effect for all of us.
Oh, this is depressing. We're basically cremating the Amazon. So they've slashed the most important trees, and then the idea is they burn everything, they let the grass regrow, and then instead of there being lots of shrubs and trees, you're left with pasture land, and the cattle come in, and after a few seasons, the nutrients here are going to be pretty terrible, and so the grasses only grow for so long, and then they need to do the exact same thing to another bit of the rainforest, and they just keep going and keep going. And before we know it, that rainforest will be gone. Like, I've read about this theoretically in the papers, but being here is just it's so goddamn uncomfortable, to be honest with you.
20% of the entire Amazon rainforest has been destroyed, and deforestation is rising at an alarming rate. It's a global catastrophe.
It looks like Armageddon.
And a disaster for the Amazon's indigenous inhabitants. Next time, I'll be getting to grips with the challenges the indigenous people of the Amazon face. Today, I meet surviving communities being pushed to the edge of the forest. And the people who are fighting back to keep 15,000 years of unbroken heritage alive.